Hello, and thank you for joining me for this week's episode of USDroneCast. My guest this week is Saunders Staley, a flying robot. He's a cinematographer and drone pilot who has built his business to be able to work with some of the largest brands on some of the coolest projects. He'll share some insights about how he was able to fly during the SuperBowl and work for NFL films. He'll also talk about a unique project that he worked on with Kitchen Sink Creative, an ad agency here in Phoenix, about a unique one-shot of downtown Phoenix and how complex it was to pull it off. He'll also have some advice for people that are just starting in the industry. But before we jump right in with Saunders, let me remind you that AZ Drone Fest is right around the corner. It will take place on October 7th at Grand Canyon University in Arizona. So check out all the details and register to attend at azdronefest.com. Now, let's dive right in this week's episode with Saunders Staley.
Welcome to USDroneCast, a podcast dedicated to drones, aerial cinematography, safety, commercial, and recreation. So get ready for engaging discussions, insightful interviews, and expert insights from top-notch professionals in the drone industry. Subscribe now and follow us on social.
Saunders, thank you so much for joining us, man. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. Good morning.
So talk to me about what attracted you to this industry. What got you into the business?
So I went to film school at Brooks Institute of Photography in Santa Barbara. I actually specialized in underwater photography. And then once I moved to Arizona, I worked for multiple different agencies, creative agencies. Everything kind of came together and started my own business on the cinematography, photography ground level. And then in 2016, when Part 107 came out, I was actually looking at this in 2013. I've been flying drones for over 10 years. And in 2013, I saw that this was going to be a part of my ground business. So it was just another tool to use on top of that. So in 2016, I developed and put together Flying Robot. And so I've been in business for 7 years. I actually trademarked the name. And again, it was a drone, and aerial photography was just another tool above and beyond the cinematography and photography I already had in place. But it took my business to the next level.
Yeah. And so are you still doing some of the cinematography outside of aerial stuff, or is that pretty much now your focus solely on aerial work?
Absolutely. So I don't really market it as much as the aerial work. I wanted to concentrate and perfect the aerial side of the business and push that out. So 90% of what I do is aerial work, but I have a ton of ground gimbals, shoot a bunch of events. So there's still, and I shoot a ton of ground photography as well. A lot of astro stuff on my own. And so ground is definitely a part of it. Definitely a huge part of it. It's just not something I really market through the Flying Robot platform.
Yeah. What was it about, and you're talking about underwater is kind of where you start, but what was it about movement and video or movement that attracted you? Like, what did you find when you start flying or where you went underwater that say, man, like I want to combine those two things, movement and photography?
Sure. Well, I'm going to date myself here, but I started back when we were shooting film. There was no digital. I'm not a digital native. We actually had an E6 processor on the boat, and we would do 4 dives a day. And the coolest thing for me, and I think what really perfected my craft, is that I couldn't see that image. I had 36 frames. That's what I had. And you would go down and you had to know lighting. You had to know focus. You had to know all these things and these techniques, and couldn't just look at it and delete. So I really think that helped me get where I am today and the quality of work Flying Robot produces, and just adding that aerial aspect to it. from the ground movements. I started with those ground movements and those underwater movements and the lighting and the framing, and then transferred all that knowledge to the aerial aspect of things. And it's just having a camera in the sky. I feel now underwater photography is super complicated. However, when you're trying to fly and you're single opping and not dual opping, I mean, you have a lot going on. And so you really need to know how to make multiple gimbal movements while you're filming, and flying the drone at the same time. So taking it to the sky was super complex, but I absolutely love it. And the things you can capture are unreal.
Yeah. So I think one thing that's unique about Flying Robot and what you do and your skill set is what's behind you is you use a variety of different drones. Like, you're not just an FPV pilot, you're not just a cinematography pilot. You have a range of tools and skill set that I think puts you in a different category. So talk to me about the importance that for you to learn all those skill set. What did you see that say, I need to master all those different tools?
Sure. First, I would say mastering photography was a really, really big thing for me. And I would suggest everybody to go out and do that first before you even dive into the film industry. I mean, master your settings. And video settings and photography settings are going to be different, but you learn about exposure. I mean, there's so many things that start with photography that push over to the video world. I mean, obviously we don't have frame rates and things like that, but I really wanted, I didn't want to be excluding myself by just shooting FPV or just, shooting basic cinematography. So we film everything. We're flying FPV drones. The Inspire 3 is right back here. We just acquired one of those that can shoot an 8K RAW. And then some of my go-to drones are the Mavic 3 Pros. I mean, they are great drone units. Easy. Anything that's portable that I can bounce around the world with and get out on the job site easy with, I love. And that's why I love the Mavic 3 Pro. But there's so many tools in the toolbox. Now, we have 12 drone units right now, and every single one, besides the backups, do a different thing and are for a different purpose.
So I'm sure like that helped you to land some serious gig, and obviously you're known for doing some filming for the NFL, for HBO, some of those things. So talk to me about the process of getting those, being approved as a vendor for those networks.
Sure. So
sorry,
I hate to say this, but the cinematography and photography part, as technical as it is, that's the easy part of the business. 90% of this is running a business. And I don't think a lot of people know that. They set up social media, have an Instagram account, and they think the business is going to come to them because they post all day. And that's just not how this works. So I think, again, you mentioned the NFL. We were one, I did shoot for HBO films. And then we were one of two vendors who were approved to fly in the TFR at the SuperBowl this past year. And to pick up clientele like that, it took me years to build a portfolio and a book of business where you started to get referrals. And I still cold call all the time. Whether that, and what I mean by cold calling, whether that be networking events, I'm always out meeting people and looking at different types of work that I can dive into. Obviously, the film industry right now is totally on hold. So I have a diversified portfolio where I'm not totally out of business because I can shoot for other clients that aren't in the film industry, obviously.
Yeah.
but I think really knowing the aspect, I think a lot of people nowadays are going, and with the disruption in 2020, everybody losing work, um, everybody wanting to start their own business and work for themselves because you have freedom. You actually work 80 hours to not work 40. That's what I like to say. But that whole disruption, I think, kind of pushed things backwards. Like, you need to focus on building your business from the ground up and then that portfolio at the same time. Because to land these bigger clients, you have to have the back end. I mean, the paperwork involved with the NFL was months of paperwork, so no one sees that side of the thing, that side of the job. They see you out flying and you get to shoot for the Super Bowl, or you're out here doing this cool work. Well, that's 10% of it. All the other side of things, the billing, the trademarking my name. It took me 6 years to finally have a registered trademark for Flying Robot. And I wanted to do that because I thought it was such a unique name. I wanted to make sure I was covered legally. So, your web domain, people don't think about that. You come up with a name, say it's John's Aerials or whatever it is, horrible name, but you need to make sure johnsaerials.com is available before, there's a whole process here. Great example. I had a friend start a business. They bought a domain name. They were in business for 3 years and then got sent a cease and desist because they didn't do the research, and now they have to change their name, and they branded themselves for over 3 years. And to do that, it's very expensive, very timely, and hard. So I really think my success has been with the business, sales, creative agency background, running the whole business side of things, and then also having that film school, camera, cinematography, and photography experience.
Yeah. So I mean, the technical expertise you had from film school, but then what you're saying is like everything else, like the back end is kind of what gave you a leg up from the rest of the competition. And so what is it like to work with those type of clients? Like, I know, like having looked at your work on Hard Knocks, it's not complicated stuff, right? Like it's just aerial views of training camps or whatever. But you still have an HBO film client like looking behind your shoulder, or like, I don't know what that's like for you to work with that kind of clientele.
So it depends. Most of the bigger productions, obviously, you're going to have a DP, the director of photography, executive producer on site, and you're going to be connected to Video Village. So what that means for people who don't know, there are going to be multiple screens that you connect to. Great example, we filmed the latest Gila River Casino Wild Horse Pass commercial, You Do You. And we were connected with the drone to over 15 different monitors. You're connected to color correction, DP, EP, all over the map, so they can see what's going on. And usually the DP stands right next to you. Sometimes the EP or producer, and they will be letting you know, let's get over here or some direction. So those are more directed by the team that you're hired with. And then other processes like the Super Bowl, we filmed all the activation on site. So the big screen that was put on the side of State Farm Stadium, the whole activation site by BetMGM, who we work for as well, filmed all that, and that was kind of more free flowing. There was a lot of work where you would get just a shot list, and you would go out and get the shots. But then again, going back to the back end, you have to file TFR paperwork. The insurance requirements are astronomical. And just all the work that goes into that to go out and get 5 shots is insane. So I would say the bigger production shoots, you're more directed. Like next week, I have a shoot. We are filming military helicopters and vehicles with live fire, which I'm super stoked about. Flying the I-3 and the whole lens kit. Um, and that is going to be so much communication with the military pilots. I'm going to have the director and the DP right next to me, and they're going to be communicating with the pilots as well. So there's a ton of coordination that goes into this. And those shots are going to be super technical. You mentioned Hard Knocks. No, a lot of these shoots, like literally, you put the drone up, you have an establishing shot just sitting there. There's nothing like, it's something I wouldn't put in my show reel, but pretty proud that I had the opportunity to film for the NFL and HBO films. And we're officially a vendor of HBO. That's another thing. You have to be vendors of the tribal nation to work for them. And that process takes years. You have to be vendors of HBO to be able to work for it. You can't just go to Hard Knocks. You have to be a vendor for Netflix before you can work for these type of films, unless, I went out as a vendor and hired an FPV pilot to come in and work for me, then that's how you would work. And I have a lot of friends who actually, and I've hired people as well, who actually, that's all they do. They don't care about vendorship, and they just want to work under somebody. And then that person, because that person handles all the business, all the paperwork, all the insurance, all I do is come out and fly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot, again, going back to running your own business, I don't think a lot of people realize that. Like what it entails. They love flying drones.
Right.
Once it gets to the paperwork and the back end stuff, it's a lot of work. I mean, that's mainly what I do.
Yeah. And then, I mean, obviously there's a financial commitment too. Like HBO is not going to hire a guy that just bought an Air 2S and has his Part 107. Like some of from a financial standpoint too, like you had to invest on your gear and on top equipment and then obviously know how to operate all that and know how to coordinate with all those different parties. But so do you enjoy the collaboration with all those with the DP and the producers, or do you rather kind of have the freedom of getting those 5 shots for the Super Bowl and you kind of do it the way you want to?
Sure. I like both. I love the collaboration because it gives me other ideas as well. And people get excited on site too. When you grab the shot they want and it's perfect, they get super stoked. So, and I love going out on those shoots where I have full control. And then I also love just shooting for myself. Like I was just out doing some scouting in New Mexico for a shoot out in Angel Fire, Taos Red River area. Absolutely beautiful. And I was shooting for myself the whole time while I'm scouting. So I think all 3 of those are at the same level. Yeah.
That's cool. And I know you also do, let's talk a little bit about the Avata. You use the Avata too. You do some one shots. Like we have some of the rock climbing gym work that you do. So talk to me about that kind of work and what do you enjoy about doing those type of shots?
The FPV one shots are super fun. And these they went viral when Jaybird posted his bowling video. Like no one really even knew about one shots.
Yeah.
Or no one was hiring for one shots, or no producer would even think about hiring somebody with a GoPro. And they have bigger Cinelifters, Cinewhoops that you can throw like naked black magics on to shoot these. But for the most part, if you want to get super tight, you can't even use those. So I really wanted to get involved with that. I was already flying FPV at the time when Jaybird launched the bowling alley video. And the Avatar, when that came out, I had all custom builds, but I love having, for whatever reason, I am a huge smart battery fan. I like the fact that I have longer flight times. The Avatar shows, like if I'm flying out in the wild, it has a H and shows exactly my location. So if I'm down in the woods, I know exactly where to come back to. And DJI just makes really, really outstanding equipment.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the rock climbing video. Yeah, we just shot for Rock Solid down in Tucson. Also shot one that I entered in Film Fest, I think, on Black Rock Bouldering. That was a
That's
while
right.
ago.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. That's my local gym where I climb. But shot for Rock Solid, and it's super complex because you have to think about all the sound effects you're putting in there too. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of sound effects that you're adding. So the edit's dynamic. I'm not going to give out a lot of my secrets, but I will say that sound or audio is just as important as your flight through the building.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And the Avatar does it. I mean, another thing, smart batteries, the reception. The reception on the Avatar is killer. I've been behind cement walls, inside hiding, and put the drone outside and flown in and been perfectly fine. So the OcuSync 3 on that thing, and I'm excited about it. I mean, DJI keeps on up in the game. OcuSync 4, I mean, it's like that.
Yeah.
But it's a great drone unit for cinema one-shots, for sure.
Well, talking about one-shots, you did one in collaboration with Kitchen Sink. Talk to me about that collaboration and the shot you did downtown Phoenix.
So I love working with Kitchen Sink. Great studio. I've been working with them for, I think, 4 or 5 years. And this was one of the hardest FPV projects I've ever worked on. I mean, we were flying one-shots all over downtown Phoenix, a collaboration with the city of Phoenix and downtown Phoenix. And they put together an absolutely epic edit. So hopefully you'll be able to show that, some of that here.
Yep.
Yeah, so proud of them for the edit. It was amazing. But they stitched every single, we had to go, when we were scouting, we had to look at, okay, we are gonna fly through this door or this window, and then we're gonna skip to the next, we're gonna edit to the next one shot, and it had to look seamless. So, you had to mask every place where we had to connect to the next one shot throughout Phoenix. Kitchen Sink had to mask that in DaVinci, After Effects. It's insane. And it looks like we're actually flying. I mean, I flew through Melinda's Alley, the speakeasy. And talking about reception, you're down below a hotel. Okay, so, and I was flying the Avatar. For 99% of those shots, it was the Avatar and GoPro 11. Pinball bar and or Stardust pinball bar and the pizza place. That was super difficult. You had to fly in and time it perfect where they opened the walk-in. And you can't stop or it ruins the shot. So we had a time with walkie-talkies right when the drone came in. The walk-in opens and then I had to cut into pinball bar. And then you cut out and they had smoke machines and lights outside the back door. And that's where I flew into that and cut the engines. And then you go into the Zona Festival. So the transitions, I think, are the hardest part. Well, I take that back. The FPV flying was pretty tough.
Outside of the flying.
Outside of the flying. The transitions. You really, what I'm trying to say is, you really can't just go out and just fly. Like, with something this dynamic, you have to have a plan. And without a plan, you're not gonna succeed with that.
Yeah, and there's like the coordination, but there's like the plan that you're talking about. It's really understanding like the next shot and how we're going to transition between this environment to the next environment and how we need to do that. So, and I'm guessing that's part of Kitchen Sink's creative process involving you and the discussion of like, which location do we go first? Or we can go from this one to that one using this hallway as a transition or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. And we scouted for a full day before we even, and then went back to the drawing board before we even shot.
So were you involved early on in that process, or did they bring you on kind of after they kind of thought through that?
Absolutely. And I actually love scouting days because we got to ride around on electric scooters all day downtown. And all we did was bounce around to the locations
Yeah.
and try to figure out how we're going to transition these shots. And they have a super cool team over there as well. So
Yeah.
I love working with them. That's another thing. Speaking of kitchen sink and a super cool team, just the people you work with. I'm at a place where I want to work, and you don't always get this. Okay, you don't always get your favorite DP on site. You want to work with. Okay, but personalities are personalities. I'm good with working with every type of personality, which makes me successful as well. But when you get that very, very cool crew that you just match with, and that's kitchen sink, it just makes the job so much more fun.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. So talking about the logistic of that shot, I know you mentioned like you guys were communicating via radio, but I mean, there's so many participants, like there's just people everywhere. You're flying, downtown Phoenix. So I'm guessing there's a level of like, okay, well, those people are part of the process, and then there's some that are just there by accident, and that's just how it is. So talk to me about kind of like how you coordinate all those people, and what did you guys have to do in order to kind of make sure nobody looks at the drone and those type of things.
Sure. So the looking at the drone thing is very difficult. When you tell people not to do something, it's usually going to happen. However, I've been very lucky, like in the rock climbing shoot and the kitchen sink shoot, where we told people not to look at the drone, and for the most part, it was successful. But going back to the kitchen sink shoot, a ton of those people were brought on. So Melinda's Alley, the people on top of the hotel, we have people in place and I shot one for Westgate Entertainment District as well. All these people were put in place that are actually part of the shoot. And then you are going to have, obviously, shooting downtown. You can't shut down downtown. We can lock off certain roads and things like that. And we had all the permitting in place for that. But you have to have, we had, not security, but kitchen sink staff in certain areas that would put people on hold. And for the most part, people don't mind. I mean, it was a few seconds to just stand there and wait while the drone was coming through. And then we had our staffed people in position. So yeah, there's a lot of coordination, but there are ways to make it work where you can work around the general public safety.
Yeah. And you talked about the different location, and they got all stitched together. I mean, it's kind of funny. It's called a one shot, but like, how many takes did you do to go through each location?
So I think it went through 4 Avatar frames. Okay. I think, and this is when GoPro was having a major bricking problem with the 11s. They had a major problem for the longest time. They finally, I complained about it. They finally did an update, and now the GoPro 11 minis don't brick anymore, but they literally would go overheat and brick. So I think during the course of that shoot, which was over 3 or 4 days, I went through 6 GoPro 11 minis, and part of that was overheating. I never broke any of those flying, but I did run through 3 sets of Polar Pro filters from crashing.
Just
and as people know, the people who know Polar Pro filters are not cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on something like that, do you budget for that when you quote a project like that? Do you kind of put like a contingency of like, yeah, I know I'm going to crash a few of those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. So if I know, I have a number in my mind, like what it's going to look like on a project that technical, and I'll allocate a certain amount of funds for those, because you don't ever go back to the client later and say, hey, can you pay for my equipment? Can you fix this?
Yeah.
That immediately would have the client drop you.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Well, anything else, any other tips that you would have for people that are looking at your work and get inspired and like, man, this is what I want to do? Like, what are some of the other tips that you would give people?
Sure. I just think going back to building the portfolio and then really knowing the business side. If you actually want to do this, there's nothing wrong with flying for somebody else. I mean, I bring people on a regular basis. So if anybody wants to DM and send me their portfolio link, absolutely send it over and we'll take a look. I always like to have a vendor list for us if I need to send somebody out on a shoot.
Yeah.
But building a portfolio is huge. If you don't have a portfolio, you can't get the business. And make sure you have everything in place. So the hardest thing for me a long time ago was what do I charge? I mean, and I'm at a level, so everybody's rates are going to be different. I used to shoot for Drone Base in 2016. I hustled for 2 years for Drone Base. I mean, I was shooting, it was $150 to $200 a shoot. And I was bouncing all over town trying to get as many shoots as possible, putting mileage and gas. I was doing the numbers. It was kind of like Uber. Is the gas worth the payout and my time? But I did that for over 2 years. So there's no, going back to the rates, everybody's are going to be different. So somebody starting out is going to be doing different work, have different equipment. Like what I charge for the Inspire 3, somebody's not going to charge for a FPV and a GoPro. So really finding out what part of the market you want to work in. So do you want to, and cinematography is not the only one, I mean, agriculture, surveying, and you do have to have GIS, if I'm saying that correctly, survey license to do some of these things. But figure out the market, know the business side of things, and then build that portfolio.
Yeah.
I mean, even if it's like LiDAR mapping, make sure you have examples of LiDAR mapping on your website. And I wouldn't stick just to social media. I would put this in perspective. If you don't have a backbone of your business above and beyond outside of social media, what if, and hypothetically, Instagram went down? Great example, TikTok is being banned in multiple places. And influencers, digital creators that relied on that income, literally, if that goes down in a day, you're losing thousands and thousands of dollars. And there's no other backbone to switch over to. So build it from the ground up and put all those aspects together. And I think you would be successful.
Yeah, you talk about drone base, and I remember those years, and I would see you all over town, just going 10 shoots a day. But there is something about for people that are just starting where the pay is not necessarily the most important thing. Where it's like right now you need to spend hours behind the drone, you need the experience, you need the portfolio, and so I think we've all started from zero, right? And so we've all done jobs like that where it's like, well, it's not great, but it's getting me my first step in and some of those experiences. What was that like for you? What did working like that brings to you that you could carry into your business today?
So I would say don't get in it for the money. Right there. Get in it because you have a passion for it. This is something that, I went to school for this. I worked multiple corporate jobs. Yes, I wanted to work for my own, but I also wanted to have creative control over my business, basically. Just control over my business, how it was run. I saw a lot of corporations doing so many things wrong. And I'm not perfect, but I wanted to build something that was almost perfect. And so get in it because you have a passion for it. Because I'll tell you right now how fast tech changes. We have to update our units every 3 years. It is very expensive, very costly. And the margins are super thin. So to make this successful, I would say maybe 1% to 3% of people are successful in this business across the nation. But it's the best move I ever made. And I got in at the right time.
Yeah.
And I branded the company, I think, in my mind, correctly. I hope so. It seems to be working out. But and I wanted to say one other thing too. Going back to like paychecks and payments and rates, don't think the biggest clients pay the most money either. They don't. Like, oh man, you landed this huge gig with like Lionsgate, big productions. Do not. I worked with small businesses where we've done dynamic shoots that pay more than huge clients I've worked with.
Yeah.
And again, it all depends on the job, the equipment, things you're using.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I love our conversation. I think you bring a lot of great experience and tips for the listeners. So that's awesome. So I appreciate your time, man. And we're looking forward to your next project. What's coming up for you? Any big things coming up?
So the one I mentioned, the military shoot next week, that's a huge one. I've never flown around live fire before. So this is going to be interesting. Again, there's a ton of coordination. I get to fly on a military helicopter tomorrow from Deer Valley Airport down to the area we're flying, which is undisclosed, obviously. But that's super cool. So there's little perks like that.
Yeah.
So that's the next thing next week. Super excited about it. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of the footage at some point.
Well, I think USDroneCast should come along with you to get some B-roll tomorrow, but that's just a suggestion. I'm just thinking there should be. All right. Thanks, Saunders. Appreciate it, man. Have a good time, okay?
Hey, thank you very much.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Thank you for listening to USDroneCast. For more information about upcoming episodes and to learn more about our upcoming Drone Film Festival, subscribe now and follow us on social or visit us online at usdronecast.com.